Well, now that the Star Beast has aired, I suppose it's time to give my thoughts on the episode. So, how was RTD's first foray back into Doctor Who? It was good. I enjoyed it. Was it perfect? No, not at all. Not perfect. But that's okay, especially since this really felt like an introductory episode. It felt like it had a lot to introduce, a lot to do. Reintroduce Donna, Sylvia, and Sean, introduce Rose, introduce the Meep and the Rarth Warriors, and also introduce Shirley Ann Bingham, a character I really liked. I don't think we've seen the last of her. We all know that Unit will be back for the third special. I can't see why they would introduce such a cool character only for one episode. I love the weaponry in the wheelchair. Seems like a good thing for a Unit scientist to have. Needs some kind of defense. She also seems like she's ripe for spin-off possibilities. Whether or not that means Hooniverse or RTD passing along to Nick Briggs and David Richardson and saying, here you go, here's some Big Finish possibility for you. I don't know, but anyways, yeah. Tennant being back, he feels like the 10th Doctor quite a bit, I have to say, which is to be expected, but he kind of feels like a more subdued 10th Doctor. Perhaps that has a lot to do with the fact that Tennant is older now. I like that we have this mystery of why the Doctor regenerated, or should we say degenerated back into this form. Seems like maybe there's going to be an explanation. They do keep referencing it, or perhaps not. I'd be fine with it being left unsolved as well, I suppose. There's that line where Tennant says, does there have to be a reason, or something like that? So they kind of have it open for both. But I think it's probably something to do with the Toymaker. But I don't know if it would be something to do with the Toymaker. I mean, if the Meeps referenced at the end was to the boss, was a reference to the Toymaker, then that would seem to indicate that Toymaker's only involved because of this adventure, not before this adventure, so he wouldn't have been there to influence the change from Jodie and David. I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, Catherine Tate sure fell into the role of Donna, almost as if she never left. The solution to her problem of her having passed the part of the meta-crisis energy into Rose, and that being the solution of how they get out of things, of how she stays alive, it seemed very convenient, but that does feel very RTD as well. I seem to remember he had a lot of those convenient plot solutions in his era. But I'm just glad he resolved it happily. And I'm also glad it's not being dragged on. Now that it's resolved, we can just get on with the other adventures. It didn't make total sense. Like, how does her memory coming back suddenly activate the bit of it in Rose? Not sure, but hey, it's Doctor Who. I feel like those ridiculous science fantasy elements have always been a part of the show. I mean, how is the TARDIS bigger on the inside? How does the TARDIS even work in general? It all takes a leap of the imagination, so yeah, I'm fine with it. As for the story, I thought it was a pretty good adaptation of the Star Beast. It wasn't entirely faithful to the original, of course, which I wasn't expecting it to be, nor would I want it to be. I mean, doing the story exactly as was written wouldn't have fit in with what they were trying to accomplish here. Different time, different characters. I do think the Meep twist could have been a little more shocking, but the scene where the Doctor put on the judge's wig was fun and a pretty good way to reveal it. Also reminded me a little bit of the Stones of Blood. The story overall, though, did feel a bit rushed. I wish we could have seen a little more of the Doctor working with the Rarth Warriors to bring the Meep down. But like I say, it had a lot to do with this episode, had a lot to introduce. Also, I have to say, though, they did do an excellent job bringing these comic aliens to life in live action. They look tremendous. I think they went both part practical and part CGI on both, which really helped to sell them as real creatures. The whole episode looked fantastic, in fact. By the sounds of it, it seems like these episodes, I believe anyway, were made before the Disney Plus deal, before Disney started sending money in. So the extra cash that clearly seems to be on the screen must be from just Bad Wolf, which means I really can't wait to see what the next series is going to look like with the Disney money added to that. And speaking of money spent on the show and things looking expensive, what did you guys think of the new title sequence? I love it. Definitely one of my favorites. Oh my goodness. Between this and the TARDIS interior, they rival my previous favorites to becoming my favorites. Especially the TARDIS interior. Like, Capaldi's was my favorite before. I loved Capaldi's bookshelves and the chalkboard. They really fit his Doctor perfectly. But even if this doesn't overtake it as my favorite, it's right up there with it. It's just so huge and it looks really expensive, and I love how it's kind of like, it feels like a combination of old and new put together, like new, bigger sets with the white design of the classic series. I just love it. Although I do think perhaps when the TARDIS rebuilt herself, she should have considered putting in a coffee failsafe along with the coffee machine. You know, some kind of defense that activates when somebody spills coffee. What made her think that wasn't going to happen? As soon as Donna had that line about losing her job due to spilling coffee on the computer, yeah, I knew it was coming. I love that it was something so simple that's going to set them off on their next big adventure. I'm also just glad to have these two back. I think they're one of the best Doctor companion duos, and I'm really looking forward to, like I say, having them back for 2 more weeks. But what about you guys? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next week for my review of Wild Blue Yonder. Goodbye.